Sling TV has something for everyone. It really just depends on what kind of mood you're in. But no matter what you're looking for, you can watch it with Sling. Sports, news, and today's hottest shows. Plus, you can explore thousands of movies and TV shows on demand. And getting Sling is easy. Sign up and start watching in just 5 minutes. Stream on any device and record up to 50 hours with your included DVR space. Plus, you won't get locked into a long-term contract. Check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the TV you love for a price you'll love. Try it today. Welcome to the Andy Staples Show presented by Sling. We are back. I survived Las Vegas. I am home. Ari made it a while back and left me there in his town. And I wasn't as equipped for it as you are,
Ari. I'm washed, I think. I think I'm just not who I used to be. I loved it. And I was sad to leave. But a week in Las Vegas is a long time. So if you made it through unscathed, then you're more battle tested than you think you are.
I'm feeling pretty good. Now, I was very well behaved. Don't believe I placed a single bet despite many walks through the casino. And I did open the gym every morning at 6 a.m. So feel good about that.
Yeah, that wasn't quite my experience, but we all enjoy Vegas our own way. That's what makes it a great city. You know,
exactly.
It could be whatever you want it to be.
So before we get into the news of the weekend, and there's a lot there's a piece of news that came down on Sunday that it's not fun to talk about. Mike Leach, Mississippi State coach, is in the hospital, and don't know much more than that other than it's a personal health crisis. Zach Arnett has been placed in charge of the Mississippi State program for now, and we'll see what happens. But prayers go out to Coach Leach and his wife Sharon, and hope everything's going to be okay. And we'll just see what happens. We'll keep you posted on that as far as we know. But that was not great news that came out on Sunday.
Yeah, it's terrible. You hope for the best for everybody in that community and Coach Leach and his family.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. Other not great news on Sunday. It was probably going to happen. You kind of sense maybe go back to the 2020 season that this was ultimately going to happen. But Ken Niumatalolo fired at Navy, Ari, and it's one of those things. They're not a national title contending program or anything like that. But this is the winningest coach in program history. And I know I saw a lot of people saying, well, he's the winningest coach. You don't do that to a guy like that. It's like, no, it feels like it had kind of run its course. And I think Coach Ken would probably agree with that. It's just he'd done such a great job. And it's tough to see it end this way. You would have wanted to see him be able to go out on his own terms and just retire and retire after an Army-Navy win. But that's just not how it's going to happen.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting about the military academies is, when you think about what's actually at stake for a lot of the young men who are on those teams and what they're signing up to do in their lives, like college football seems like kind of small potatoes. I think in the pregame video, what stood out to me is that everybody who's on that field playing would die for the people watching it. Like, I thought that was super moving, and it kind of brings it in perspective of who these people are. That said, I'm not necessarily sure what the standard is there. You know what I mean? In terms of what's expected. Obviously, both sides want to win this game. It's a tradition in college football like none other. But when you have a coach who has been there for as many years as he's been there, 15 seasons, right?
Yeah.
109 wins. I mean,
he replaced Paul Johnson when Paul Johnson went to Georgia Tech.
I mean, he has been the face of Navy football for almost as long as I've been following the sport, So I just, when this happens, A, what's the reaction to this?
Yeah.
And B, who do you need to find in order to, fill those big shoes? And then C, what is success at Navy?
Right. And that's what Stephen Larkin in the chat asked. Are we sure Navy realizes how hard a job that is? I will say this is not dissimilar to when Army made its change and went and got Jeff Monken. And Jeff Monken changed that program dramatically. And that was what they needed. Because remember, Navy was dominating that series. Army was not winning a ton of games under any circumstances. And then Army all of a sudden became a very good football team and became the better team in this rivalry as well. So I do think it's possible to find that person. And it's possible that, sometimes sometimes you need a new voice. Sometimes that's the only way to do it. Remember, Navy won every year from 2002 to 2015, and then Monken finally broke through, and they won every game from 16 to 18, and then won again in 21 again yesterday. So
yep,
it is possible to find that right person.
Yeah, and Mitch, my editor and my co-host and Stars Matter, once put me up to a story that I haven't gotten around to doing yet, but I have to do, of what does recruiting look like when you're the head coach of a
it's very
service
hard,
academy. I don't even know like where you begin. Like, what's the first step?
Well, you look at the grades. Honestly, that's the first step. You find out who is a good football player with good grades.
But what do you do? Do you just like go and find football players first and then pitch the military to them?
Yes. Well, I actually, the first coach who ever pulled me out of class at school was a guy named Cal McCombs, and he was an assistant at the Air Force Academy. And he explained the whole thing to me because I was right up their alley in terms of what they're looking for.
Because you have a big brain.
No, I was a too small offensive lineman. I had decent grades. My biological father was in the Army. And so if you have a parent who served in the military, then it's easier to get you in. I believe it's called a presidential nomination. It's easier to get you into the academy, because if you're not, you have to go through your actual congressperson. Like your U.S. congressperson has to nominate you to serve at the academy.
All right, so I'm 16, 17-year-old Andy Staples, and I have Mountain Dew, and I'm in my biology class. I get pulled out.
Yeah.
This is the first coach I'm about to meet. I want you to pitch to me how it went for you.
I was freaking out because I was ready to go. I was ready to go to the Air Force Academy. This dude had me go. I'd never been pitched before like this. And I was ready to sign up. I don't know if I could have pointed out Colorado Springs on a map, but I was ready to roll. They played Hawaii every other year. That sounded kind of awesome.
Was that part of the pitch?
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you need a ride home, you just hop a transport. Like you can do that.
So was the pitch about all the military obligations that you would have to fulfill after, or was it about all the cool things?
They certainly don't shy away from that. They tell you this is how many years you're going to have to serve. No, they also point out you're going in as an officer, and it's a different experience. So there was that, but I got home and I was talking to my parents about it, and my stepdad was just laughing, and he's like, "Did he tell you could be a fighter pilot?" I'm like, no, he didn't tell me, but that's obviously what I want to do if I went to the Air Force Academy. He's like, you're too big to fit in one of those planes.
Yeah, you're like 6'1", aren't you?
I'm 6'3". So,
I was trying to knock you down a peg there.
Yeah, no. But so he's like, yeah, you're to quote him, my stepdad exactly, your bag of ass isn't fitting in one of those cockpits.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was the end of that.
It's just like when you were a college football recruit, you're thinking about the NFL because you're a kid, you dream.
I never thought about the NFL though, because I couldn't believe anybody was recruiting me in the first place. Like I was in a little different boat. Like, so Scott Bryan was a guy I played with in high school. I was the right tackle. He was the left tackle. Scott was the kind of recruit you would have written about. Like he had, I want to say 75 offers. He ended up signing with Florida. That was the kind of recruitment you're thinking of. Like I was stunned anybody was even considering me to play college football.
Yeah, no, I know. And I understand that everybody's recruitments aren't quite the front page of the athletic recruitments, but every kid dreams about going to a place and being good and, all the things like that. And like, I would just have a hard time thinking like, I'm thinking about football and girls and college experience and frats and all the things and then it's just like, okay, well, you have to also join the military after. And
that was a serious consideration for me. Like I knew if I ever wanted to really think about that I would have to come to terms with, okay, do I want to serve in the military? If I do, which branch do I want to serve in? And decide.
Can you switch the branch?
No, I mean, I would have to decide. If I really wanted to be in the Army, I would have had to go call the West Point coaches and be like, listen, Air Force is recruiting me, but I really, really want to be at West Point.
My cousin went to the U.S. Naval Academy, and she has a pretty cool life, it seems. Like she lives in San Diego and, one of the bases down there and all that stuff. But like I also kind of had like a secondary view of all the stuff that she had to go through to kind of get to this point where she, once you get through the basic training and all those stations and all the stuff that you got, it's a special type of person.
The elite of the elite. That go to those schools and they get through those schools, they are the elite of the elite. And
but also recruiting for that is really, really hard, I bet.
Recruiting for the regular students there is hard enough, much less the ones that are going to play a sport there.
And the fact that they play football with Notre Dame and are actually competitive.
And are competitive.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible, and they're pretty tough, and they go through a lot. Trip Tepper in the chat, the Holy Cross head coach is who Navy should hire. Bob Chesney. That is a very good call, Trip. That is a very, very good idea. Trip also wants to know what my ideal call sign would be if I actually did become a fighter pilot. I think it has to be whole hog. That would absolutely be my call sign. Whole hog.
What do you think mine would be?
Food court.
I thought it'd be grab ass, but hey,
grab ass would be even better. I don't know about the don't ask, don't tell of all that, Ari. So
that's true. Okay. So, that's I'm very excited to see how that all pans out, because it's just an interesting aspect of it, and it kind of might, whoever Navy hires, light a fire under my ass to go out and actually do that story, because I think it'd be an interesting one.
Well, I do want to see an Army Navy game. That I regret that in my career. That's a bucket list thing I've never gotten to do. There were years I had to cover the Heisman, so I was in New York, but I was in New York, so I couldn't get down to Philly to do that. And I just think that's one of those I'm going to regret if I don't get to one of those at some point. So I'm doing that one of these years.
Yeah, I'll go with you.
I love it. We do a whole week. We do a whole week of podcasts. It'd be tremendous.
Yeah. Also, it's in the Northeast every year, right? So, you got to take me to the clam shacks and stuff.
Well, we just do cheesecakes or cheesesteaks.
Cheesesteaks and
oh yeah, there's a lot going on. We could have some fun with that, but
because I actually really like the food in the Maryland.
Absolutely.
Northeast. And I know it varies a lot from Maryland to Philadelphia to New York to Boston, but that stuff's all good.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of stuff there. And then
Landis and I ate dinner in Annapolis one year because Ohio State played Navy. I think it was their opening game in 2014, the year they won the national title, and our first game working together. And I remember having a few good meals out there, and the crab chips are excellent.
I say the crab cakes down in Maryland, and you work your way up to the lobster rolls in New England. And
crab cakes in football, that's what Maryland does.
And Old Bay. Gotta love Old Bay seasoning. Timothy Heffernan asks, Troy Taylor at Stanford. That is a job that got filled. Guy who understands the rivalry because he played on the other side. Guy who understands the league because he was recently the OC at Utah. He was the one who unlocked Tyler Huntley at Utah. I think that's a good hire by Stanford. I'm very interested to see what he does. And it's crazier because we talk about how long Ken Niumatalolo has been at Navy. David Shaw hasn't been the head coach at Stanford this whole time, but since he succeeded Jim Harbaugh, it feels like it was basically the same administration from 2007 to now.
Yeah, I also know that on one hand, the Stanford job is probably one of the hardest jobs in the Power Five just because of the limitations academically. But I have it in my brain, and I'm waiting for somebody to explain to me why I'm wrong. That actually being the head coach at Stanford would be a leg up. I actually believe that Stanford could be in the top 20% of college football programs.
Oh, I agree. And you talk to a lot of recruits, so I think you understand this better than most. I think players have changed over the last few years, and they are smart enough to understand that if they have an opportunity to go to Stanford for free, that vaults Stanford above a lot of other places, even places that play better football or that have a better draft history, because
they've also been very good in the not so distant past. So
you can get drafted from Stanford. You can play in the NFL if you play at Stanford. 2, if you don't, you have a Stanford degree.
And there's a lot of very good colleges, and I always joke about this with Mitch, but Michigan's a good school, and Northwestern's a good school, and Vandy's a good school. All these places are amazing institutions that I would never have gotten into out of high school. But Stanford, I feel in the Power Five is standing on the pedestal by itself.
Oh, it's by itself.
If it's by itself, don't tell me about how hard it is to get people in. The people that you are recruiting are the ones that would get in. To me, you could sell football on itself and just be like, you know what? Even if academics is your secondary plan, you're going to make a boatload of money. Even if you don't go to the NFL, but just so you know, when you come to Stanford, our goal is to get you to the NFL. Like, I mean, like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And I feel like if you get a coach that can understand that and sell it the right way.
I feel like that's how they sold it for a long time at Stanford, throughout most of the David Shaw era.
But you recruit it like it's a football factory and academics are second. Now, that would be crazy, but that's what I would do.
Well, I think you could sell both. And let me throw this at you, Ari. This is an interesting one that somebody brought up to me last week when I was at the Sports Business Journal Intercollegiate Athletics Forum. A lot of people thinking deeply about the sport. This was something that I had thought about a little bit, but I got to talking with somebody, and so the antitrust exemption for the Ivy League schools expired. That said they don't have to give athletic scholarships, and they can't be sued because they don't give athletic scholarships.
So now they do.
Well, they don't.
So they will.
They still choose not to. But what if somebody does? And then, like, I imagine at this point, because for the same reason we were talking about Stanford, I think recruits have changed. I think priorities have changed. I think there are a lot of really good football players out there that if you told them you can go to Harvard for free on athletic scholarship, and I do realize there are need-based scholarships that would have gotten you to Harvard or Princeton or Yale for free or mostly free, depending on your parent situation. But if you just lock, stock, and barrel, here's a scholarship, 4 years at Harvard, I bet they could field a pretty nasty football team.
I wrote a story, and I'm trying to find it right now, last year, about a prospect. Yeah, one Southern California prospect is spurning Power 5 offers to play at Harvard. And, like, he had the perfect plan. And I'm trying to remember what the young man's name was. His name was Cooper Barkate. And Cooper, here's his plan. Because he had Power 5 offers. He was like a really good receiver. And he committed to Harvard. And I thought that was an interesting story. So I called him up. And he said, I know this is going to seem weird to people. And, that's fine. But I am going to go to Harvard for 4 years. I'm going to play football there for 4 years, and I'm going to redshirt, and I'm going to be a graduate transfer after year 4. So I get my Harvard degree. And if I'm good enough to play football, then I will play at a Power 5 school my final year. And if I'm not good enough to get a Power 5 scholarship after my 4 years at Harvard, that means that the right thing to do for me was to focus on my education. And I thought it was a brilliant way of viewing it.
Wow. And understood things very well, because the Ivies don't do red shirts. So you get 4 years to play. And when you're done with that 4th year, even if you have an extra year of eligibility, you're done there. And we saw that there was a guy.
And we're talking about a kid who played at Mater Dei.
Right.
With a bunch of 5-star studs that were going to USC and Clemson and all that. And he had offers from Arizona State, Arkansas. I think his grandfather or father played at UCLA. Oregon offered him, UCLA offered him, Nebraska, Notre Dame. Like, he really, like, this wasn't just like a dude who had non-committable offers. Like, he had a legitimate chance to play at some big time football.
He played in 4 games this year, which means that's a red shirt.
Yeah.
Caught 10 passes for 157 yards in those 4 games. So I imagine he's going to be a pretty big part of their offense next year.
Oh, you just looked up his stats? I lost track.
Yeah. So
yeah,
he finished, he finished number 7 on the team in receptions, despite only playing 4 games.
Yeah. So, he's a really good, I'm assuming that he's probably one of the top receivers in the Ivy League, just based on what he was before. But, he understands that I think the quote is, seeing the people with a level of status that would reach out to her and say congratulations, Harvard alumni and people from the Ivy League, talking about his sister who also went to Harvard, really opened up his eyes to a new world that he never even knew existed in terms of financial connections and things like that. So, like, this guy's going places regardless of whether it's in football or not, because he was raised in a certain way to exploit the system as much as the system exploits them.
Oh, he knows what's going on. And this is a really interesting thing, because imagine, again, if Harvard could just show up at the best, a bunch of top 100 players' doors, the top 100 players that they feel like could succeed academically at Harvard, and they could say, you can have a 4-year scholarship.
Yeah.
Right now. Like, there's not going to be a lot of no's there.
Yeah. Now, the thing with that is, I don't know how many people would get into Harvard because even smart, good students can't get in.
Well,
So
yeah,
you have to be an
the
exceptional student.
The top 100 of the people who would, and they have a tiered recruiting system where they can take, as many people who would have gotten in anyways they want, and then there's a sliding scale where they only get so many. But yes, I cannot wait to see what happens, because inevitably somebody's going to sue. They're not going to be able to collude forever, and somebody's going to sue, or one school is going to, maybe Browns used to be like, let's offer some scholarships, and suddenly everybody else will too, and it will.
Well, that's when the world will start ending, when the academic institutions are the ones that are starting to play ball and making it football school first. But I was really moved by his thought process, and and I just, like, when you talk to certain people, you just know that they're going places, and he's certainly one of them. And not just because he's going to Harvard, just the way he was speaking.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, some people just kind of understand how the world works a little better than say, I don't know, 17-year-old Andy Staples did.
Because I actually have like a thought that like 80% of the colleges that we all go to, like, unless you're going to get a law degree or a medical or pre-med or whatever, that like all of our undergraduate degrees are the same for the most part, and that we all kind of just make the world the best that we can based on our experience, our work.
I think you're probably, and it's the reason I got into Princeton, but I would have had to pay for it. I would have had to take on loans.
If you went to Princeton and you wanted to go into this field, do you think that you would be any better off right now than you already are?
No, because all the Princeton people from that era ended up at Sports Illustrated, and I ended up writing for Sports Illustrated too.
I went to the University of Arizona because it was the school that was in state. Like, if I would have gone to Michigan or Mizzou or Northwestern and did journalism, would I be on a fast track right now? Would I be making more money right now? I don't know. The answer to that question is yes.
I don't think my life would have been appreciably different, but that's because I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I assumed I would work at a newspaper my whole life.
And there's certain fields where it does make a difference.
Those loans. Exactly. If I'd have wanted to be a corporate lawyer, if I'd have wanted to be an investment banker, if I'd have wanted to be a senator, I think I would have been smarter to do that. But because of what I wanted to do, and I actually did that field, knowing what I was making on those first jobs, I'm really glad I did it the way I did. Otherwise,
well, let me balance the scale of the podcast out here, though, and let everybody know that I did not get into Princeton out of high school. I got an 1100 on the SAT, and I was mildly hungover from prom the night before. That was my experience.
Attaboy.
And I got into Arizona, and I'm rocking ass now.
Exactly.
Is rocking ass a good thing to say?
Whatever. You're not grabbing ass, so that's good.
Well, I'm rocking ass on the ass show.
There you go. Ari, when we come back, we got to talk Heisman. Caleb Williams won it. We'll talk about how that went down. I will reveal my Heisman ballot because I'm allowed to now. And then we'll talk about the names that we have not mentioned yet that might be in it next year, because we had a fun conversation with our guy Ralph Russo via text about that. And I've been thinking of even more crazy names to throw into there. We'll be right back. Sling TV has something for everyone. All your favorite shows on your favorite channels, all right at your fingertips. What you watch is up to you. It really just depends on what kind of mood you're in. So if you're looking for sports, Sling's got you covered with pro and college football and basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, golf, racing, and so much more. Sling also has reality TV, so you can keep up with the latest gossip with today's hottest shows on channels like TLC, Bravo, MTV, and more. And don't forget about news. Get up to date with today's most trusted sources like MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. Feeling adventurous? Explore thousands of movies and shows on demand. So what kind of mood are you in? No matter your answer, Sling has what you need. Getting Sling is easy. Sign up and start watching in just 5 minutes. You can stream on any device, and you can record up to 50 hours with your included DVR space. And the best part, you can pause or customize your subscription at any time. So check out sling.com for special offers. Sling, the TV you love for a price you'll love. Try it today. These days, every potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. You've already used LinkedIn to figure out how to connect to people. Now, use it to find the best job candidate. Add the job that you're hiring for and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile, and spread the word fast that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then figure out who you'd like to hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Andy. That's linkedin.com/Andy to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. linkedin.com/Andy. Welcome back. Let's talk Heisman Trophy. Caleb Williams wins it. I can now reveal my ballot. I had Caleb Williams #1. #2, I know there's a lot of controversy over a certain Georgia player being in New York. #2 on my ballot was the most outstanding player in Athens, Georgia, the most outstanding player in Clark County, Georgia, the most outstanding player in the state of Georgia, and one of the most outstanding players in America. And his name's Jalen Carter. That was #2 on my ballot.
Yep.
#3 on my ballot was Max Duggan.
You want to hear my ballot?
Yeah.
I didn't get it this year because I gambled on Anthony Richardson. This is your fault.
This is my fault? This is my fault?
Your show. No, it's my fault.
Did I talk you into Anthony Richardson after the Utah game?
No, my eyes did.
Oh, well, that's not my fault. That's your fault.
We were talking about it on the show the night that he went crazy against Utah. And I went and looked at his odds, and his odds were like 150 to 1. And I hit it, and I didn't realize I wasn't thinking about the voting process. But totally fair, and I understand. But I probably would have put the same 3 on my list, just in a different order. I think Carter might have been 3rd.
That's fine, and I can understand if you want to do Hendon Hooker, if you want to do CJ Stroud.
Well, the thing that's tough about the Heisman, man, and the thing that also kind of stinks, and I don't know if there's any way to avoid it, but I want to go into the Heisman Trophy ceremony one year and not know who's winning.
Yeah,
it's so obvious who's going to win. And when's the last time you
Kyler and Tua?
Like when Steve Spurrier made that joke last night where he and it's the most prestigious award, and everybody was like, "Oh, come on, just announce it already." Imagine that moment when you really don't know who they're going to say.
Right.
And the thing that I wonder about the Heisman and always have is it seems to be like a group think exercise where everybody starts thinking one way and then that's what it is. Because Caleb Williams was, I guess, the most exciting player in college football, and I would have voted #1 for him too. But I think there's plenty of arguments to be made that he wasn't the Heisman winner, and nobody was having him, and it was to the point where it was one of the most lopsided results in history. Right?
Well,
because winning wasn't a part of it, so there's a lot of tremendous players.
I think more people just caught on to Caleb, and you've seen that with Johnny Manziel. That's what happened in the Kyler Tua year. Now, we didn't quite know who was going to win, although I think the straw polls had Kyler pretty well ahead by the week of the ceremony, but that had changed since the week before. But I do think sometimes guys play in bigger games later in the season and they just shine and come forward. I mean, there wasn't much doubt in my mind as I was watching Caleb on the field before he popped his hamstring in the Pac-12 championship game, who the best player in the country was.
Yeah.
If I was starting,
did Caleb Williams play quarterback better than anybody else in the country played their position?
Yes. Because he had to be Superman every moment or that defense was going to fail them.
But they lost twice.
Because the defense failed them. Did he have bad games either one of those games? So,
well, the second time not because of him, but
he still had a great game despite having one hamstring.
Yeah.
So
no, and I'm not trying to neg the guy. He won it, and I would have voted for him. I'm just saying, wouldn't there be a argument for other people to make it at least kind of questionable going into Saturday, or was it just so clean cut and obvious?
It was.
It's you want to talk about a defense that Drake May played poorly in some of the bigger games down the line, so maybe that's part of it.
Right.
But it's Drake May was in the same exact situation, and he had North Carolina in the playoffs.
Yeah, but you got to score more than 17 against Georgia Tech.
Yeah. No, I know. And that's why he wasn't. That's not why. But Hendon Hooker, I thought did more for his program this year than Caleb Williams did, and then he blew his knee out. He didn't even go to New York.
I don't know that he did. I think Tennessee's defense was better than USC's defense. So
yeah,
I think
Tennessee
they also played
better teams too.
A better, more well-rounded football team than USC. So
it's like, is Lincoln Riley a quarterback genius, or does he continually have the benefit of the doubt of playing in conferences where guys get open and quarterbacks rack up crazy stats?
I think if Lincoln Riley were a head coach in the SEC, that his offenses would be great, his quarterbacks would play incredibly, and his defenses would stink. Like that is it's philosophically how you run your program, how you decide to practice. I don't think it matters what conference you're in. We'll see when they go to the Big Ten.
But it does when it comes to stat accumulation.
No, Hendon Hooker accumulated some pretty big stats in the SEC.
I know.
And Caleb Williams would have
those stats are more impressive to me than Caleb's.
If Caleb Williams were in the SEC with Lincoln Riley as his head coach, he would accumulate the same kind of stats.
Yeah. Again, I would have voted for the guy. Just a discussion. I thought it was crazy that Hendon Hooker wasn't there.
Oh, I did too. But look, they set the cutoff at 4 for the TV show. Like, there's no reason to do that. You could make it 5 if you wanted to. I mean, obviously, like
he wasn't even in the top 4.
He was number 5. Yeah.
That's like insane.
But it was very close between him and Stetson Bennett at 4 and 5. Like it doesn't matter. Neither of them had a chance. Like
it is funny watching the
Caleb Williams got more first place votes than Stetson Bennett got votes.
Yeah. No, I know. And it's like funny watching them on stage knowing that they have no shot to win.
It's not funny. It's
not funny. It's just like it's weird to enjoy the program and then looking at these guys knowing that they know in their hearts they've got no shot to win. It stinks.
So Kevin Tay with a really interesting question in the chat. The real question is, will Caleb Williams become the first repeat Heisman winner since Archie Griffin? Probably
it's never going to happen again
because it'll happen at some point. But I mean, I'm going to vote against it or bet against it until it does.
If Tim Tebow didn't do it, then no one's doing it.
And Tim Tebow did win the national title the year after, but he didn't put up the numbers.
I just think that there's voter fatigue. I think like Bryce Young.
Yeah.
I just think that like people
Bryce
want
Young
something
didn't have
new.
as good of a year because Bryce Young didn't have the kind of receivers that he had the year before.
Yeah, and he wouldn't have won it this year. But like even if Bryce Young had a tremendous season and they made the playoff, do you think he would have been voted the same way?
I think there was a really good chance he would have.
I think voters want to be different and new every year. I just think I think in order to do it twice, you have to have a better season the second year and do something remarkable than the first year that you won it. And I think that that's increasingly harder to do because you have to be so perfect the first time you win it to begin with. Now, is Caleb Williams not going to be the best player in college football again next year? Of course he is. But that's like a nice segue into the discussion that you want to have.
Well, exactly. And that's who are we not talking about now who is going to be in the mix this time next year? Our friend Ralph Russo texted us this last night, and I answered with Hudson Card. And I was kind of kidding, but kind of not, because Hudson Card is one of the most skilled quarterbacks in the transfer portal right now. And I would not be shocked if somebody comes out of the transfer portal and gets in a new spot and they find the perfect place for them and blow up and they're awesome.
Do you think that so when we do the cutoff of people who weren't considered this year, is that like we're never a part of the hype or weren't in the top 5?
We're never a part of the hype at all.
So like Drake May wouldn't count right now.
Oh, Drake May. Yeah. Drake May's the guy we talked about all year for it.
All right. What about Arch Manning?
That would be something because it would mean Quinn Ewers isn't starting at Texas anymore. Well, exactly.
You never know. What a Ohio State quarterback, Devin Brown or Kyle McCord? Because just being Ohio State's quarterback, it means you're going to put up a bunch of numbers.
Exactly.
Cade Klubnik.
Cade Klubnik. You mentioned one in our chat with Ralph that I thought was a really good one. Donovan Edwards.
Yep, he's a stud.
And JJ McCarthy, I think, is one because we saw when what did we say all year? They never asked JJ McCarthy to throw him to the wind. The first time they did, he was pretty awesome at it.
That's right. There's no question. Here's another one that's kind of strange. Jaden Daniels, if he comes back,
he could have some talent around him.
He's going to have some talent around him, and he played a lot better in the second half of the year than the first half.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting one.
I could get behind because all it is about getting momentum at the second half of the year.
Exactly.
So like, and he kind of already did that this year.
We can be reasonably certain they're going to be a good team.
Like Jaden Daniels had an okay year for what he's capable of physically, and he had LSU if they went out, they're in the playoff mode, like in week 10. So like it could, lightning could strike twice.
How about Connor Wegman?
Could be.
I mean, if they're good, he's going to get a lot of credit for that.
Michael Penix Jr., does that count, or is he too much as a candidate this year?
I don't know if he was enough of a candidate this year to say that. I say go ahead, throw him on there.
Yeah. What about Chandler Morris?
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Did he beat out Duggan this year?
He did. He started day one, and then Duggan took over. So Chandler Morris doing what Duggan did this year, absolutely. Oh, Trip Tepper, here's an interesting one. Can't believe I'm saying this, Joe Milton. Well,
you never know.
We know Joe Milton has the skill set to do it. And we know he's in an offense that's going to put up big numbers, but unfortunately for Joe, it's just when he's played, he's not been able to be that accurate. If Joe Milton ever solves the accuracy thing, which I realize that's
number 1 overall pick.
Oh,
he could be the reason why I lose my Heisman vote next year.
Oh, yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr., you have to say. What about Quinshon Judkins?
That's another good one. Ooh, yeah.
I made a list.
I like that.
There's another one
Judkins a lot.
that I have to say just because it just has to be on brand.
Mm-hmm.
Drew Aller.
Yes. Why not?
Why not?
If Penn State is really good and they have an offensive renaissance, he's going to get the credit for it.
Yeah. I mean, Quinn Ewers,
absolutely.
I can't just throw out Arch Manning.
He certainly
not
can't
put out Quinn there. But yeah, so I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure Caleb Williams will be back next year. Hopefully he will be, because that means you owe me $1,000. Hopefully,
yeah, because
we're starting to get into crunch time.
You got a pretty good shot if he if he has a really good year and is in the hunt for the Heisman again. Matthew Pate with an interesting one. Ty Simpson finalist. Write it down. I'm glad Matthew brings this up because I wanted to pose this to you. I was talking on the SiriusXM SEC channel on Friday afternoon, and we had Mike Rodak from AL.com on, and we were asking him, how do you think they're going to handle the Will Anderson and Bryce Young situation? Are they going to play? And he said, no, I don't think they're going to play. They haven't made an announcement yet, but they probably aren't going to play. And he pointed out that Nick Saban is probably going to say, don't play, because they are potentially top 5 picks.
Yeah.
And being a top 5 pick is more valuable to Alabama than playing in this Sugar Bowl against Kansas State.
That's right.
So I'm going to ask you, Ari. We saw Jalen Milroe up close and personal at that Alabama-Texas A&M game. That was his, he got the start, didn't play particularly well. Ty Simpson is their other quarterback right now. If Bryce Young winds up not playing, which it sounds like he may not, who are you going to start? Are you going to try Ty Simpson and see if he might be your starter next year?
All right, you had me on the show. Let me warm up my hot take arm here.
Okay, or are you going Milroe? Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so I am an idiot, and I bet on the New York Giants on Sunday.
Oh, that's bad. They got smoked.
They're getting 7.5
by our guy Jalen Hurts,
and I thought they had a pretty solid defense, divisional, whatever. I don't even want to tell you my thought process because it was so inherently stupid. But as I was watching Jalen Hurts playing, I reminded myself what he looked like when he was at Alabama.
Yes.
Super talented player.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't a very good passer. Part of the reason why they took him out, right, is because
I will point out, I remember I was at Jalen Hurts' first game. That was against USC and Jerry World. He was a better thrower of the ball then than when he left Alabama. So he regressed as a passer. And then at Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley got him right.
Which could be Lincoln Riley is a quarterback genius to dovetail back on what we were talking about.
Yeah.
But if you would have told somebody who watched or watches Jalen Hurts cook now in the NFL, what happened to him at Alabama and how he got benched and how he had to transfer, could you imagine the thought process there? Of
no one would believe you. No one would believe you.
Dramatic transformations of any player I think I've ever seen.
Yes, it is,
because he's legitimately one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL now,
and he makes it look easy.
So
some of the stuff he was doing against the Giants, like some of those QB powers, you're just like, holy cow! They're barely touching him because they're so afraid of what he might do if he throws it.
Yeah. So the reason why I bring this up is, and you tell me if I'm crazy, you're Mr. SEC, you know about this more. But in my brain, the Jalen Milroe that we saw in person and we saw a few times this year reminded me a little bit of what Jalen Hurts looked like when he reached the uncomfortable stages at Alabama.
Correct.
Super athletic, ton of potential, dealt kind of a tough hand.
And he's got a good arm. It's not like he can't.
Good arm.
Yeah.
Strong arm.
Yep.
That guy could be a starting quarterback in the NFL in 4 or 5 years if things progress the right way for him. If he transfers to USC, for instance. I'm kidding. But like that,
You're
to
not
me,
kidding.
Like,
they're going to need somebody in 24.
And you know how I am, and everybody knows me on the show as Start the 5-star kid, right?
Yeah.
But like I thought that I saw.
I mean, everybody at Alabama is a very high.
Was Milroe a 5-star?
I don't know if he was a 5-star.
I don't think that he was a 5-star.
He was a 4-star if he wasn't.
He was a high-end 4-star.
Yeah.
But like everybody always knows me as Start the 5-star that you haven't seen over what we know. Right. And a lot of times that's true. But this time I think Milroe, with a good offseason, with some development and comfortable.
And there also may be a new OC at Alabama next year.
Could be a dangerous stud. Right. So to me, I would put him on my list of somebody who can not only start next year.
So you say play him in the Sugar Bowl.
I mean, I'd play both if you could. What do you have to lose?
Yeah. Well, you don't have to lose anything other than a game, and
that no one gives a shit about. Yeah,
people will make fun of you for losing it, but they're not going to.
Yeah,
they're not going to.
All right, I've got one more name that I have to mention. And I think that this name, it's kind of heaty.
Okay,
but it's going to be a good segue to the last thing that we talk about on the podcast, which is.
I know exactly what name you're going to give me. Go
say it for me.
Shedeur Sanders.
Boom.
What
if Colorado is just rocks ass next year? That's my new catchphrase. By the way,
listen. If you win 8 games at Colorado next year, that's probably enough to vault Shedeur into the because people know how bad they were this year.
Like, and I don't know how good the guy is, to be honest. So he was a top 300 player, and he did really well at Jackson State. Doesn't Colorado open up with a big dog next year?
TCU at TCU.
So I think we're going to find out very early in his career if he's got the goods or not. But what if he is just awesome?
Oh my God, that would be incredible. Can you imagine the Heisman ceremony?
I want to talk about the hype. This is a hype award. Can you imagine the hype?
Well, and this, right. He's going to be at a place where they're generating more hype on their own than anybody else is.
He's in the middle of the eye of the hype storm.
Oh man!
And his last name is Sanders.
I mean, his brother's in charge of the hype, essentially.
Oh yeah, he can just. You know how much Heisman moments he's the only candidate in the race next year that can have Heisman moments in the locker room for everybody to see.
Oh my gosh. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you may be right. Well, since we're on that subject, when we return, we got to talk about Coach Prime's first blue chip flip since getting the job at Colorado. We'll be right back. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the International Space Station and the Mars rover. Well, now they're bringing that precision engineering to your shaving experience. If you're watching on the video feed right now, here is a Henson Shaving razor. It looks decidedly old school, but as you just learned, it has some high-tech stuff in there. Razor blades are like diving boards. The longer the board, the more the wobble. The more wobble, the more nicks, cuts, and scrapes. A bad shave isn't a blade problem. It's an extension problem. But by using aerospace-grade CNC machines, Henson makes metal razors that extend just 0.0013 inches, which is less than the thickness of a human hair. That means it's a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave. And they're exactly right. Seriously, Henson Shaving wants the best razor, not the best razor business. That means no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades, and no planned obsolescence. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edge blades to give you that old-school shave with the benefits of new-school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, it's only about $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. It's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that will last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/Andy to pick the razor for you and use the code Andy, and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. It's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com. That's hensonshaving.com/Andy and use the code Andy. That's hensonshaving.com/Andy. All right, Coach Prime. We knew this was going to happen eventually. It happened very quickly. Dylan Edwards, a 4-star running back from Derby, Kansas, has flipped from Notre Dame to Colorado. We saw the photos on Twitter this weekend, yucking it up with Coach Prime. Ari, you wrote a story about this, and I'm glad you did, because it was this. There was a lot of backstory to this one that made it a little bit different than what we kind of expected. So tell everybody the story of Dylan Edwards and Coach Prime.
So when I got Dylan Edwards on the phone, I was like, this is going to be awesome. I cannot wait to hear like what Deion did, right? Because like all of our perceptions is Deion Sanders is able to erase months of recruiting from other schools by just being prime time. And, he said the magic word, or he was just his eccentric self, and he flipped a guy from Notre Dame in 6 days. And like, that's not what happened here at all. Like, what happened here was like, he was his coach when he was like 5 in Dallas.
Yeah.
And there was a family relationship there with Dylan Edwards to go to Colorado. So it's kind of like
he recruited him at Jackson State too.
He did. Yes.
Yeah.
And by the way, what Dylan Edwards said, 2 things. I don't even know if I used this quote, but this is the Andy Staples show, because you're here for the exclusive.
Oh yeah.
That he didn't want to go to an FCS school. He wanted to play in the Power 5. So that when Deion Sanders went to a Power 5, it automatically made Colorado a legitimate contender for his services, because he wanted Power 5 schedule, Power 5 locker room, Power 5 environment, which is probably 95% of the people in his position are going to want those.
Travis Hunter, what he did is very unusual.
Yes. So the fact that you just have the first person to come out and just say, yeah, well, Deion in the Power 5 is different than Deion at Jackson State, is a reminder now that this is why Deion said during his introductory press conference that Colorado wasn't about the location, it was about the destination, because he knew all he needed to do was get into a Power 5 place and he could make it his own, regardless of whether it was in Boulder or on Mars. The second thing that I thought was interesting was that Edwards said that there are a bunch more players that are higher ranked than him that are going to be a part of this class too, which again drums up the hype machine. So this wasn't a Deion special where he called a kid cold turkey out of nowhere, recruited him to Colorado and got him in 6 days, which would have been incredible, but that's not what happened. But I'm wondering if Deion will be able to pull off recruitments like that before this. Before the cycle's over.
As we record this, it is 9:18 p.m. Eastern time on December 11th. National Signing Day is about 10 days away. How many top 300 recruits do you think Coach Prime is going to have in his first Colorado, in the early signing period at Colorado?
So 10 days from now?
Yes.
4?
Over, under, I was going to say over, under 5. So
probably under. I mean, if he gets 8 top 100 players or something in a week and a half, that would be remarkable. And I think that that's kind of what the promise is, or the hope is, for Colorado. But I don't know how realistic it is that he can erase other recruitments just because he's Deion Sanders. So, like, I know that he is a very persuasive man. And, his track record of what he's going to do and the way that people kind of cling to the words that he says are important. But if he is able to start flipping top 100 players away from Alabama and Clemson and Florida and all and like really starts hitting the big guys right off the bat, that would, I think, be ahead of schedule, even what I think he's capable of.
Yeah, and Catherine B with a very good point. The bigger goal for Deion has to be getting kids to push back their signing to February, which then gives him a chance to really,
of course,
on him. That's a good point.
And like, to me, whenever anybody gets hired in December, I don't really count the first class as much anything.
Right.
Like, but if Deion Sanders signs the number 12 overall class next year, Colorado, which wouldn't make me turn my head for a big, that would be a disappointment for an Alabama. But if he does it at Colorado next year, that would be some real unbelievable recruiting. So,
well, let's put that in perspective. You're talking about for the 2024 class, if he could sign the number 12 class. Remember, USC and UCLA will be gone from the Pac-12 by that point. It would be either number 12 would be either 1 or 2 in the new Pac-12, because it's either gonna be them or Oregon.
Yeah, and they're not winning a national title in the next 2 years, so it's going to be a building process. And I think the thing with Deion is, if he's able to sign a top 5 class next year, which I think is possible, then that speeds up the trajectory of the program. But the question then is, if he's able to sign a top 5 class at Colorado, this isn't just a one-off with Travis Hunter, but he's not going to be at Colorado very long, right?
Yeah, he'll get poached.
So, like, this is the thing that I think is very, very interesting about this saga, because how quick he can turn around a program. If he's able to turn around the worst Power 5 program that's not in a fertile recruiting state quickly, then what could he do at a Clemson or an Alabama or Ohio State or something like that? So I don't know if he's a social fit in some of these places, but I think you make him fit.
I mean, we are very much putting the cart ahead of the horse, because he's got to get these guys. I know. He's got to get these guys there. They got to coach them. We'll see what happens. But
he's hired a pretty good staff too. Like the Sean Lewis hire was incredible.
Oh, Sean Lewis, great hire. And Sean Lewis, having been an FBS head coach the last few years, nice sounding board for you if you're Coach Prime.
When's the last time a head coach that wasn't getting fired left to be an assistant?
It's a good question.
That doesn't happen very often.
Todd Monken, who's the current Georgia offensive coordinator, left the Southern Miss head coaching job to be the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but that's for an NFL assistant job. There's a MAC coach. Didn't Dan Enos did it when he became Alabama's offensive coordinator. He left Central Michigan.
Yeah. And I think that, like, it's a savvy career move, because sometimes in is out, right? Or sometimes down is up.
So I think if you are deciding what to do, it pays a lot more. And I think that's the concern now in the MAC, is they're realizing, okay, you could be a Big Ten coordinator and make twice as much money and probably have a better chance at getting a Power 5 head coaching job than if you were a MAC head coach.
Also, being a MAC head coach is like the hardest thing to do in the world. So I don't know.
Very hard. I mean, and the thing is, you still have to get kind of lucky there. You know, if you have a few injuries, even if you have a good team, that's it. And if you don't leave exactly right when you're the hot coach, it may never come back.
Right. And most of the MAC guys do bounce, but like, how many PJ Flecks have there been? And then in the season that PJ Fleck had, the year that he bounced, they went undefeated, didn't they?
Yes, Western Michigan. Yes,
so,
they did.
You know how hard it is to create an undefeated roster in the MAC when all of the schools are very similar to one another. They're all in the same geographical footprint.
Dave Doran in Illinois, same thing.
Yeah. So, you know, it's hard. And I personally think that if Sean Lewis goes to Colorado and Shedeur Sanders wins the Heisman, or they are in the top 15 in total offense at Colorado, like, he's a more attractive head coaching candidate.
People are also naturally not going to give Deion credit. So they will give Sean Lewis more credit, and he will become a bigger head coaching candidate than he might have been had he gone to be the OC at some different Power 5 school.
This is an interesting thought that I'm happy you said that, because I wanted to bring it up. In my comments to the story that I wrote today, Andy, there was a lot of hate. And I don't know if that's the right word, haters, but there were a lot of people who said that they were looking forward to the house of cards crumbling, that Deion's a fraud, that this is a joke. And I don't know, like, is Deion Sanders a heel or a protagonist?
Well, that's completely up to the person watching him. Deion thinks he's the baby face, if we're using.
But I'm saying, like, how, like, if you did a poll right now, like, do you think people are rooting for him or rooting against him?
I don't know if it's a matter of rooting for or rooting against. I think there are people who think that it is all style and no substance. Yeah. And then there are people who think that he's on to something. I think if you listen to me, you know I'm one of the people who thinks he's on to something. I could be completely wrong, but I don't think I am. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to wind up being a pretty good coach. I don't know, like, you're talking about, well, if they get the number 12 club, I don't know if it happens that fast. I don't know if they do it like that. But I do know that he's going to get players there that thus far at Jackson State and now at Colorado, he's hired people who are very smart, who can help him along the way. Yeah. So,
and honestly, if Deion Sanders
in the chat says Prime Prep was real bad. Yes, it was. Jackson State was real good. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's the more recent thing.
Deion, if he is smart, will lead the program and be the face of it, but he won't put his hands in too many of the cookie jars. Go get the talent, be at the recruiting dinners, and trust the assistants that you hired to cook.
Well, isn't this exactly what we're talking about with Jimbo Fisher? Isn't
Yeah,
that exactly what
that's
Texas A&M people want Jimbo Fisher to dial back to
yeah.
be the guy who's the face of the program,
I
the
think
guy
that being
who
the
is the
facade
lead recruiter?
or the
Yeah,
facade is a negative connotation. The
yeah,
face of a program is 80% of the job.
yeah. And being the CEO, like Dabo is a great example. Dabo hasn't called a play. He was never a play
Also,
caller.
Jimbo Fisher isn't
Urban
unique.
Meyer was never a lead play caller for a team. Never once.
I don't think that this Jimbo situation is that unique.
It's not. Most head coaches are like this.
His is extraordinarily bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the calls for CEO-ish type roles for coaches and to get a gifted play caller on both sides of the ball are far common on the message board geniuses than you think it is. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we haven't talked about Bobby Petrino being a candidate for that job.
Yeah, unbelievable.
He is a candidate for that job. And I've been going back and forth on this. He has the one quality that I've keep saying, because I kept hearing Garrett Riley and I wasn't sure that he would have this quality. The one quality whoever gets this job has to have is they have to be willing to tell Jimbo to go stick it somewhere. If Jimbo's like, no, I want to take back over, or why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And Bobby Petrino, I can guarantee you, does not give a crap what Jimbo Fisher thinks.
Yeah. And well, you gotta, maybe Jimbo Fisher has to hire somebody like this to stop him from being. It's like when you have a gambling account and you've had a bad week, you close the account because you got to be disciplined enough to know that you can't control yourself. Right. So he'll go hire somebody who
he can't roll right over him. Now, the thing with Bobby Petrino is personality wise, he might not be the easiest to get along with. The situation second time around at Louisville, yes, he got Lamar Jackson. Yes, that was awesome. Yes, they were good. But the last part of him at Louisville was awful. And they were not working very hard.
But the number one quality that everybody can say about Petrino is that he's a gifted play caller and a good coach.
Very gifted play caller.
And that's exactly
very good offensive coach.
So,
yes.
And that's maybe this is a discussion for later in the week because we're getting to the end of it here.
Well, we may have that discussion. That's what that job probably gets filled sometime this week. So we can have a full discussion when it does get filled. But I did want to throw that out there because I thought it was interesting. As you were talking about the naysayers and the doubters of Deion Sanders, who basically saying exactly the same thing you're saying of Jimbo Fisher, like, hey, you got to dial back. You got to stay with what you're good at. And I think like Dabo is a great example of a guy who knows what he's good at and focuses on that.
And there's nothing wrong with being good at getting good players on your team.
Right. Exactly.
Everybody has a role.
It's maybe the most important role.
It's not maybe, it is.
Yeah. So,
you know what? That's my role in my house, Andy. I can't cook. I'm not a very good cook.
Yep.
But I run errands like a G. I'll go to the grocery store. I got the lid. I bring it in. Chef Britt's in there cooking up something special, but she could not do it without the ingredients that I buy. I picked out the avocados. I got the grapes. I washed the grapes.
Nice.
Can't make a baby's lunch without washed grapes.
You sure can't. See, you know where you fit. You know what makes you great.
Yeah, I don't go into the kitchen while she's in there cooking
and you don't overreach.
Salt her stuff. Like she's a great cook.
Let's be perfectly honest. I've been in your house. Britt's the head coach.
Yeah.
You're the ops guy.
Yeah. No. Thank you for giving me a job. I thought I was just like a
volunteer
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely the ops guy. No question about that.
That's right.
All right, everybody. This has been a fun, very newsy show. Again, say a little prayer. Mike Leach, hopefully hanging in there. We don't know what's going on exactly, but thinking about him and his family. And we'll be back all week. Again, just because the season's over doesn't mean we stop. We're going to have as much fun on this show as we always do. So Ari and I will be back talking more shenanigans. We have our bowl preview later in the week. I haven't quite figured out how we're going to do it.
We're going to do something funny like the NCAA tournament. We'll come up with something.
Oh, we'll have a very fun bowl preview. That's going to be later this week. And we just, this is the time of year when all kinds of crazy stuff happens. I'm sure the Portal Authority, Max Olson, is going to pay us a visit at some point, and we will have a lot to talk about.
And signing day in 9 days, as they're listening.
All right, we got bowls in 6 days.
Let's go.
We're not messing around. This never ends. It never ends. We'll talk to you later.